and they were in Lubbock last night, and so this is when we could get them. Okay, if we can, I'd like Winston, where'd he go? To open us up in prayer. Well, he went. Okay, he's doing something. We'll circle back. Let me do a couple of little things real quick. There he is.
Testing. There it is.
Are you ready to go? Good seeing everyone here tonight. Let's all stand and we'll go to the Father together. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight. First, we want to thank you for the children that you've given to us, Lord. They're precious in your sight. Your word says that they come down to us as gifts from heaven. Oh, Father, forgive us for the way that we've been treating them in these recent days. And Lord, I pray that you would continue to raise up a standard of strength and focus. I thank you for Jamie Haynes and what she's doing here tonight. I pray that you would bless her and all of her group that's here to speak. I pray for Mr. Spiller, Lord, as he speaks to us and the others. And Father, I pray that in the end, you would prosper and grow this great work. And I pray that now in Jesus' name. Amen. Jamie, God bless you.
Okay, y'all have a seat. I was just going to say just a little bit about myself. For those that don't know, I'm Jamie Haynes. My organization is Texans Wake Up, and started it in 2020 and really have just been on a journey and continue to learn more and more about education, public education here in Texas. Just really passionate about it. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of issues, and just excited to get engaged, learn more. And I really felt a calling the last 3 or 4 months. God put it on my heart that 2023 was the year that we were going to educate our community. And so I am committed to bringing in speakers, hopefully once every single month, into the Amarillo area. And some dynamic speakers we have coming. I'm excited about what everybody's going to learn from them, particularly what's happening in other schools, whether they be really big or small rural schools all throughout Texas. If you don't have one of our brochures, be sure to grab one on the way out. But we have 2 coming in February. Lynn Davenport and Mary Lowe with Families Engaged for Effective Education. They are super engaged in the fight to protect kids. And then in March, we will have a lady who has been just entrenched in the education world in Oklahoma. And she is in particular responsible for removing the Amplify curriculum in most of Oklahoma. And as a lot of y'all know, Amarillo ISD has that curriculum now, and so it's been questioned quite a bit. So anyways, that's some fun stuff that we have coming up. Just want to thank Arena of Life Church so much for letting us be here tonight. We really appreciate that. Want to continue to thank the Texas Ed 911 crew, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. But first, when we get done speaking, we'll probably have an hour to about an hour and 10-minute panel discussion. I'm going to try to be quiet. Y'all know it's hard for me because I want y'all to hear from them. But after that's over, we will move on to a question and answer session for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll break, and they'll all be around here to answer any questions you guys have or visit with y'all. Probably when we finish the panel discussion, we're going to pass some baskets, and this money will go straight to their travel expenses, go to Texas Ed 911. I'm not keeping a penny of it, so please know that Texas Ed 911 is not funded by anybody. They don't have grants. It's literally some moms, community members, concerned citizens that care deeply, and they drove up here on their own accord, for us and to tour Texas. So we appreciate that. Okay, really quickly, let me tell you about Melissa Beckett. It's our first panelist. What? Okay, sorry. She is a mom of 3 boys. I should have got my glasses. 16 and 4 years old, who volunteers her time as a parent advocate in education. As a parent advocate, Melissa strives to aid parents in asserting their God-given inalienable rights as the primary decision makers for their children, especially as it relates to the education system. Melissa is also a coordinator for the Texas Education 911 grassroots parent and community-led movement to urgently fix Texas schools in the 2023 legislative session. Many things need to change in Texas education, and Melissa is committed to making sure Texas parents are properly represented and respected in any legislative efforts this coming session. Thank you for being here, Melissa. Next, we have Lee Spiller. Lee is the Executive Director of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights in Texas. For over 25 years, Mr. Spiller has worked to restore inalienable human rights in the field of mental health. He has spoken locally, nationally, and internationally on issues ranging from abuse to psychiatric institutions to parental rights in school mental health. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights is a nonprofit, non-political, non-religious mental health industry watchdog whose mission is to eradicate abuses committed under the guise of mental health. CCHR has helped to enact more than 180 laws internationally protecting individuals from abusive and coercive mental health practices since it was formed over 50 years ago. Okay, Aileen, help me with your last name. Blachowski. Okay, that's hard for everybody, right? Blachowski. Okay, Aileen is a wife and mom of 6, you guys. She fled California to North Texas in September 2020 with her family after more than 15 years of leadership and grassroots activism in life, marriage, liberty, and educational issues. Currently, Aileen leads the educational division of CCDF Collin County. She is dedicated to elevating awareness about all things affecting our freedoms, especially making sure Texas does not become California. And bless her heart, she thought she was coming to safe ground, and then she moved to right in the middle of the battleground. Okay, I will turn it over and let's begin.
Awesome. I mean, can you guys give Jamie a huge round of applause for making this evening available for you? We are very excited to be here in Amarillo. I think I was maybe in Amarillo in high school to play a sport, but other than that, I have not been in West Texas. I live in East Texas now, and I'm so glad to be here. And we are streaming live, and we are excited to address your questions, and we'll do that towards the end. So if you do have any questions, just maybe write them down if you want to make sure you don't forget, and then we'll make sure we'll get them to, at the end if we don't address them in the presentation. But first, on your seats, you should have a little push card that says Texas Ed 911, and it lists these 13 legislative priorities that you also see up here on the screen. And this is not something that I came up with. It's not something that this group here specifically came up with, other than the fact that we were on a group of parents that talked and communicated and coordinated all across the state, thousands of parents that are talking about what needs to change in education. And we realized that parents really didn't have a voice, that there were lots of voices out there, but they didn't have all the right intentions, and they weren't parents. And as whether it be a parent or grandparent, you're probably seeing what is happening in our public school system. And it is a tragedy, and it is continuing to get worse. And this is the year that we have to fix it, or we will lose our kids. And so our goal is effectively to be as loud as possible to our legislators in Austin. And so we're going around having these types of events, educating people on more of the details and the examples of what's happening in our classroom, as well as the solutions that we are recommending, so that then you can talk to your friends, you can talk to your representatives, and you can say, I support these Texas Education 911 priorities. I expect you as my representative to support them. And we have, sample legislation that we have been working with a lot of legislators on. And so, so our intent is to just help Texas save public education. We do not take a stance on school choice. And the reason for that is there are lots of people focused on that, but no matter what is decided related to school choice, we will have public schools. And we deserve excellent public education, not what we have right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through a handful of questions at a high level as to what is happening in our public schools. And so the first thing is that our parental rights are being trampled on. They are not being honored. And so that needs to be fixed. Part of the reason that's happening is we don't have enforcement when it comes to education. So we have the Texas Education Association, which is the TEA, but they are not acting as an enforcement arm when it comes to what is happening in our schools. And it is the largest state agency, and it's the only state agency that does not have an enforcement arm. And so we are asking that we have enforcement, because we have a lot of really good laws, but our school districts don't follow them. Most of them do not follow them, and they are really just suggestions without the enforcement. And so what is happening in our public schools? This is actually a pretty short list, and I don't expect you to absorb it all right now, but basically everything but actually educating our children is what is actually happening in our public schools. Whether it be our teachers talking to kids about what pronoun that they would like to choose, whether it's public or mental health, whether it's social emotional learning, whether it's learning how to, or having conversations about apologizing to kids, how to calm themselves, how to learn what their emotions are. We are not actually teaching our kids how to be successful in life. And you are probably seeing that when you go to the grocery store. The people that are checking you out they do not have the same cognitive abilities that checkout folks had 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And our kids, our grandkids, we're seeing it in the quality of work and that they're doing. And so it is not a small thing that our schools are not succeeding. And our schools might look like schools on the outside, but on the inside, they are not schools any longer. And parents really have no idea. And so you might think, well, this is only happening in Austin ISD. Or maybe it's only happening in Dallas, Fort Worth. It's not happening in West Texas. So Jamie, is this stuff happening in West Texas?
I would just say that a lot of y'all know I filed quite a few grievances with the school. And so that's when she talks about there's no teeth, you can file a grievance, but it's kind of like if you went to the police station to tell the police at the police station we're breaking the law. They're not really going to punish themselves that harshly, right? And they're probably all friends and maybe going to protect themselves. And so this is the scenario that we're in. When you file with the TEA, they're very non-responsive. It takes weeks for them to get back with you. And then after you have to go through the grievance process first before they'll even talk to you. And then after that, really, they don't ever say much. And then they might nudge them and tell them to do something, but really there's nothing ever happens and there's no consequences. And so when she says teeth, we want a consequence, because like she said, there's some really great laws on the books and some really thought that went into these bills that have been passed. We just need it to be executed. And so I love what they've come up with this outside law enforcement.
Go ahead, Aileen.
So yes, the problems are happening everywhere. And when I left California, I thought it was coming to freedom. And then a few months after I unpacked my bags and boxes and got kids situated in school, I started looking around and thinking, everybody felt so safe, but I could see all the evidence of all the leftist stuff going on in the schools. And I said, they're like gophers. The left dug under your fences and they just popped up inside your schools. They're quiet and you feel safe and you don't realize that this is going on. And that's when I thought, oh gosh, my family thought that I retired from this and they were going to get their mother back. And they didn't really, because here I am again. Every school district has problems like this. It does not matter what part of the state you're in. In Prosper, we have terrible issues trying to find out who created the curriculum our kids are actually being presented with. When social emotional learning lessons come or woke social justice is found in a history lesson, you can't find out who actually created the lesson and put it in your schools. We literally have mountains of bureaucracy in the middle, learning coaches, professional learning communities, and all of these things, curriculum coordinators, and no one will take responsibility for what the problems are. And Texas law states that a parent has a right to access the curriculum or anything related to your child in a school. And this kind of chaos, right, with the organization is putting us in a situation where if we could know the publisher, if we could know the edition, we could know the copyright date of the book that they were using to teach our kids, we ought to be able to know who's actually teaching and creating the curriculum and who's responsible for what's there. So again, an overall enforcement arm, when a teacher is putting CRT material, racial bias or racial tensions in a book, we should be able to say that's a violation of SB 3 and is an existing law, and we should be able to say here's the consequence for violating that. As it stands now, we have a fantastic law with no teeth, and parents are running around in circles. It's total confusion. Families, taxpayers deserve better than that, and I'm really looking forward to great progress this session so that we can get that for all of Texas parents. Oh, SB 3 is a law that was passed in the last session that is essentially it's an anti-CRT law, but it doesn't use those words. It says school material should not make someone feel bad or if it makes someone feel superior because of their race, because of their sex or gender, any of those things. And it also disallows action civics, if you will, activist lessons or internships or anything like that for class credit. But those things are actually happening all the time.
Yeah, they're happening all the time, and whether it be CRT or sex education, or what might be happening in, what do they call it? When they go into the gym and they have a rally or pep rally. Sorry, I'm like, the words wouldn't come to me. All of those places are where we are finding things that we as conservative Christians are not okay with. And they're coming into our schools, as Aileen said, like, kind of in a sly way. And it's very hard to get our hands on these things. And Lee, I know you have some examples of some surveys and things that are happening in the schools as well that most parents are not aware of.
Absolutely. And I would back up and say this. You hear people talk about CRT. What you have to understand is that's kind of like a symptom. At the bottom of it, there's nothing racial. It's about molding your children's attitudes, beliefs, values, and behavior. Right? They picked that. I don't know why they picked that, actually. I assume it's because we all don't like racism, and then if you go against that type of teaching, you look bad. That's kind of what I think. But you have to really look at the root, and it is about manipulation. And unfortunately, mental health programs kind of get used to carry that out, and some of the roots of it come from those, which you'll see in a minute. But surveys, yes. This came from, I believe it was Victoria. They were using the same company. I pulled up one of their question sets, and you've got questions like, during the past week, how often did you feel hopeful? During the past week, how often did you feel angry? Now let's look at that. You can't answer no. The closest you can get is almost never. Almost never. How often did you feel sad? Almost never. How often did you smoke crack this week, Johnny? That doesn't work.
And it has a underlying assumption.
It has a normalizing effect, right? Yeah. Depending on the type of question. Oh, it's, I remember seeing a question on a survey of, how often do you lose control of your emotions when you're mad? And again, the closest to no you could get was almost never. That's normalizing, right? And we need to pay attention to what we are normalizing. But then those answers, they end up on dashboards, right? This dashboard, let's see. This is an actual dashboard. You've got social awareness, emotional regulation, self-management, grit. Self-management. How do you grade that? How much is enough? How much is too much? How much emotional regulation is enough? How much is too much? How much self-esteem? How much empathy? A teacher actually sent me her dashboard because in her school district they were surveying teachers as well. And I think her empathy score was something like 50. Man, that's horrible. Apparently, though, it was better than average in her district.
But again, what are they measuring? And then what are they doing with this information that they're collecting on our
Exactly.
children?
Well, and I know that in some cases it's touted as a way to find students that are having a problem and intervene. But what are you intervening on? Emotional regulation? We're talking about kids. We're talking, man, think about teenagers. You're up, you're down.
Lee,
One day you have I mean, it's just nuts.
will you speak just a little bit to the Rhythm app? I know you're familiar with that particular cell curriculum because I believe Panhandle and Happy ISD both have the Rhythm app.
Are y'all familiar with that app? It's called Rhythm, and it's emoji based. So the kids answer questions based on little emojis in 5 domains: mental, energy, emotional, physical, and social. And then the app has little activities based on the kids' answer, and it keeps dashboards. Now, the first school district that we were aware of it in, it was in a Dallas Morning News article, and one of the things that caught our attention was that the article said that it had triggered 5,000 alerts on students so far. 5,000. And I think the district only had about 54,000 students. We're like, wow, we got to know more about this. And so we went onto their website, and at that time, they said that their app was a robust, emojified biopsychosocial assessment. That's pretty heavy. In Texas, parents are supposed to consent for psychological examination, testing, and treatment. Certainly a biopsychosocial assessment would be that. So we asked the school district for the consent forms. And they sent us the general form that parents sign for their kids to access the school's technology resources. So we emailed them back. We said, wait a minute here. This doesn't seem to be responsive to our question. Are you telling us that the only consent is the general consent for students in this district to access your IT resources? And they said, yeah, because it was approved by the tech team and leadership. They felt like that was sufficient.
And this is a perfect example of whether it be the TEA or whether, it be the administration in a school district or the school board, allowing this kind of stuff into our schools without notifying the parents, without asking permission, without thinking they need permission. And again, who is in charge of our children? We as parents are, and we are sending them to school to increase their academic strength. We are not sending them to school for the schools to be their parent.
That's correct.
That is a huge problem.
Exactly. And so fast forward, they took down the assertion that this was a biopsychosocial assessment. They now deny it. But on their website, there is a white paper. And they talk about their app being a digital mental health platform. How many parents signed their kids up for a digital mental health platform? Right? And it says, I can't quote it verbatim, but essentially, they use licensed clinicians to develop something and interventions that are the same as you would discover in individual therapy or coaching. Wait a minute, so it's a therapy app? Is it a therapy app? If it is a therapy app, don't you think that parental consent should be required?
And the thing about tonight is we have so many different topics that you're going to hear about, and you're going to want to know more. And so the good thing is at the end that we're going to tell you about some trainings that we have available and some that will be coming up so that you can learn more about these topics, so that you can have a better understanding of everything that's going on. Another place where we have challenges is in discipline. And so there are 2 issues going on with discipline right now. Teachers are not safe in their classroom because there are kids that should be disciplined, that should not be in the classroom, that are not being disciplined, and they're being left in the classroom. And there are various reasons for that, and that needs to be fixed. We also have another problem where students who have never been in trouble before are being sent to a place called DAEP, Discipline Alternative Education Placement. And you would think they're being sent there for violent offenses, drug dealing, those kinds of things. That's what it's supposed to be for. But what it's also being used for is pretty much where whoever wants to send them there, because we have examples of kids who have done nothing wrong and are being sent to DAP. We have examples of kids who have done very, very minor things and again have never been in trouble before. They are not a threat to other kids at the school, and they're still being sent to these DAPs. And DAPs are not on the same campus. They are someplace else. When a kid goes to DAP, they are not allowed to be on campus. They cannot participate in extracurricular activities. They are not taught. They use an online system, and they look up most of their answers via Google. They, in most places, wear jumpsuits like they are in prison. It is not an okay place to be sending kids who do not deserve to be there. Part of the problem is the way our law is written, but a large portion of it is the discretion of our administrators. And they dig their heels in when a parent challenges what is going on. And that is a huge problem. And I have, this happened to a friend of mine and her son. And so I started researching it, and it is happening all over the state. Big, small schools, it doesn't matter. And what this is this is a chart based on the Texas data that I pulled. And basically what this is saying is they're 50% of the time they have to go to DAP. Like it's a serious offense and the law says they have to go there. This other pink part, 41% of the time, it is discretionary and based on the code of conduct. That means anything that is listed in the code of conduct or perceived to be part of the code of conduct gives our administration the authority to put kids in DAP. So 41% of the kids across the state that are going to DAP are not going for violent reasons, and they're not going because they're an ongoing significant problem. This is an absolute abuse of DAP, and our kids have no due process, and parents cannot save their kids from this other than pulling their kids out of the school system, period. And it is a huge problem. So if you know anybody whose kids are looking at DAP, do not let them go. Tell them to get their kid out. Tell them to call me. We'll do the best we can to educate them on what their options are. It is a huge problem. I want to also talk about, so these are just examples of things that are happening. It is not just one area where we are having problems. It's not just library books. It's not just mental health. But we need to back up a little bit and talk about what is the order of the family? Why are our school districts acting like they are the family? Because all parents love their children. The majority of parents have not had their children taken away from them. They are the parent that is in charge. And those rights are given to us by God. They're not given to us by the state. Those are not rights that the state has the ability to take away or give back unless we have done something significantly wrong. They do not own our children. And this is to help us understand what the biblical order of the family is. And I'm sure every single person here understands this. But I want you to think about this and how it relates to how the school or our state education system views our children. They don't see it like this. We see our children as underneath our protection, under our umbrella. The school sees our children as being over to the side. And you can look at their actions. They see our children as theirs, not ours. And you can also see it in a lot of the documents that we have the privilege of getting to interact with our children or the privilege of being involved in something. That is not the way education was ever intended to be. And our school system is viewing our children like they belong to the state.
Can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
A lot of times in education, you'll find that they create a picture to explain a concept or a program. And more, the programs that are coming into our schools have our children at the center with the school community around them, and then the greater community around that, and then the family. They've got other programs and, all kinds of inputs into our children's lives. And the family, we're out on the outer rim of the circle, or maybe just one in from the outside. And this is happening over and over and over again when you see these images. They do, in concept, train teachers, administrators, and everyone who's touching our kids and serving our kids in the school in this model. And parents need to see these images and really soak that in. They are taking the parental role, and it's purposeful for them, and we have to be alerted to it. So if you have children, grandchildren in the schools, look up the whole school, whole child model. Look up some of those phrases that are on that first page. Look up social emotional learning, or CASEL, CASEL, the organization that's driving these programs into our nation's schools. They all have the same kind of image. with our kid in the middle, and we're nowhere near them. And we have to ask ourselves, why do they want to do that? What are they planning? What's next?
Yeah, and actually Lee can speak to that.
Yeah, and I have to say, you may hear, us talk about schools. The truth is, we all want kids to be healthy. We all want them to be happy. We all want them to be competent. But sometimes we get led around by our heartstrings. And these programs are what is being promoted to schools, right? So it's not that your school board is necessarily bad or that your school is necessarily bad. But they are working with the tools. I mean, I'm sure there's some bad apples, but I think to a large degree they are working with the tools that are given to them. And around the early 1900s, you had this new movement, and it was called progressive education, and it was based to a great deal on psychology. All of a sudden, feelings mattered, and all of a sudden, you were doing all these things. And we included a couple of historical quotes, and these are later. This first one is from a report called Action for Mental Health from 1961. There were some meetings. They came out with a plan. And they said that the school curriculum should, quote, be designed to bend the student to the realities of society, especially by way of vocational education. The curriculum should be designed to promote mental health as an instrument for social progress and a means of altering culture, right? So when you hear people talk about social and emotional learning or CRT, this kind of thing is the root, right? Fast forward to 1973, and the Childhood International Education Seminar, psychiatrist Chester M. Pierce said this. He said, every child in America entering school at the age of 5 is insane because he comes to school with certain allegiances to our founding fathers, toward our elected official, toward his parents, toward a belief in a supernatural being, and toward the sovereignty of this nation as a separate entity. It's up to you as teachers to make all these sick children well by creating the international child of the future.
And so you can see, it kind of puts the whole picture together as to why we are so messed up in our school systems. And to Lee's point, we have excellent teachers, we have excellent administrators in a lot of places, but we need people to put the guard up and protect what is coming into our schools. And we're going to talk in a little bit about who is driving what's coming into our schools. Aileen, this is something that happened this week with your son that I wanted you to talk about, and I need to tell our panelists we have to keep moving quickly. Okay, all right, go ahead.
So this should be really alarming to you because, this was delivered to my son in Spanish class. It wasn't even delivered in Spanish. So they took 8 electronic pages of survey questions in these 4 domains. And those domains belong to me, my son's heart, his mind, his soul, and his strength. They belong to God. They don't belong to the school. These are not domains of the school. This is not a place for the school to shape my child. But in light of what you just heard, you can see that worldview is being sold to these teachers. We need to help these kids. We need to create this sort of child in this kind of environment. As my son, now we've had lots of conversations about this. My son's 15, he's 6'3", and he's full of himself, right? So he is the mayor, we call him, in our house because he's very social and he's very charming, and he knows that this stuff is bogus and that he shouldn't really take any of it seriously. And he took a picture of it and he said, check this out. And I said, bring it home, I'll pay for it.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
I said, bring it home, I'll pay for it. I said, you're opted out, show this to your teacher and don't fill it out. And he said, no, it's all good, I handled it. And then I said, oh my gosh, what did you do? And so he said, I'll tell you about it later. When he came home, he told me the teacher walked through the classes, classroom full of 15-year-olds. And she stopped and looked over his shoulder and she said, Logan, I really wish you would take this more seriously. And I thought, who the heck is she telling my child that he's doing it wrong? And he said, you can't tell me that I'm doing it wrong. It's a self-assessment. And she said, you know why? Because he was giving himself 10 out of 10 in everything. And she said, really, Logan? And he said, yeah, you asked me how I feel about, my physical appearance and how healthy I am. And look at me, I'm a Greek god, 10 out of 10.
He's probably not wrong.
So I'm going to keep that, kid. I'm going to keep that one. But anyway, you get the idea. These are domains that the school is increasingly coming in and taking over. And so this will become a grievance. I will find out who did this. But this is going to turn into evidence that becomes the part of the solution set at the Capitol. This has already been sent to a legislator. That's the power of text at 911, is we work with parents and we help them understand that when they bring information like this forward, we can help them get solutions. And there are legislators very, very interested in protecting parental rights.
There are.
Over things like this.
And so what I'd like to do now is point to some of the solutions that you have on your push card. And so there are some constitutional amendments that are coming out that are very good, that are going to solidify in our Texas Constitution the rights that basically God has given us. And we do need that. And then our schools need to be fully transparent. Currently, they're obviously not transparent. It is very hard to get information. And often we are hearing, well, that information's copyrighted, or, well, that would violate the vendor's marketplace interest, or we signed a non-disclosure agreement. And I'm sorry, anybody who's doing business with our schools, if they want to use that excuse to keep information from taxpayers and parents, they have no business in our schools and they need to take their business elsewhere. That should be 100% unacceptable. And we are still working with legislators on hopefully that bill will be filed. And then we need to have consequences. And so the consequences that Texas Ed 911 came up with, and this was a group of parents Wednesdays from 12 to 1:30. We've been meeting for over a year. We still are. And this is a very creative solution that I believe that they came up with. And it was because of all these examples. We know what's happening in the schools. And so first and foremost, which is just a basic thing, we need to be able to sue our school districts when there's a problem. Whether it's an injunction to say, stop doing what you're doing, or whether it's for damages because they are damaging our children. That does not exist currently. They have sovereign immunity. And so we are asking for the ability to sue our school districts and that they would not have sovereign immunity. If we were to have this, our school districts would behave better. They would care more about the laws and they would care more about the rights of parents because they would be at risk of something. Right now, they are at risk of nothing. And they know parents spend years, like I'm well past a year with my friend with that DAP situation. And we are just now to the point that if we could get a lawyer to take it on, that we could maybe take it to court, although we know we have no chance of winning. But that's how long it takes for those options, so it's unacceptable. The creative part is the parental ombudsman. It can also be called an inspector general, and you will see some bills related to this, and we're very hopeful that they are going to have all the right components. But what we're requiring is that basically this would be like the police of the school districts is the best way to describe it. If you think about your nursing homes that are around here, if your grandma or your friend is in there, if you go in there and you're not happy with what is going on, you just pick up the phone and you call the state. And it initiates a mandatory investigation. That's what we're asking for. One phone call. A parent makes a phone call, initiates an investigation, and then it is the state's responsibility to investigate and determine. It should not be on the shoulders of all of these wonderful parents to do hundreds and hundreds of hours of research and FOIAs trying to get information out of the school. It is unacceptable. And so that is what we are asking for. It is a very big ask, and we do need you to reach out to your legislators saying that you support this when the bills get filed. And so when you leave, there is a sign-up sheet at the back, and I apologize, I don't have a printed one. I ran out this week. This is our 4th event this week. We are really hitting it hard because it's the beginning of the legislative session. And so if you would like to get our action alerts when these bills get filed, to say, reach out and say, hey, we really like this bill, please support it, or vice versa, we are going to provide those for you. And so please feel free to sign up. So the second problem we want to talk about is that, think about all this stuff that's happening in our schools. The kids aren't learning. There's no time to focus on actual learning, and they are absolutely failing. And so I pulled some numbers for Amarillo and Canyon ISD, and I'll tell you, these numbers are actually better than a lot of the places I've been, but they're nothing to be happy about. Okay, so I want you to look at this, and then I'm going to have Aileen explain these categories for you. But take a look here, Amarillo ISD star results. Let's look at 8th grade math. So this is saying that 61%, and this is actually why I'm saying this is actually a pretty high number, 61% in 2018 met expectations basically for math. And it looks like it's been trending down pretty much since then at 51%. Go over here to masters. This says that somewhere between 14 and 20% over the last several years, our kids are mastering math in 8th grade. So I would like Aileen to explain to you what does it mean to meet and master?
Yes, this is a really interesting fact. So a group of us were looking at these numbers and went into the raw score data on the TEA website. And we looked at how many questions would you need to get correct in order to have reached the mastery category. This year in 2022, that answer is 70% or better. 70% of the questions answered correctly.
So a C.
So that's a fat C minus, by the way. And this is the low bar that we are now calling mastery, and our districts are celebrating it. If you go down to meets grade level, you're in the mid 60s. And if you get to the approaches grade level, which is a lower category still, that is about a 62%. That's an F on the classical grading scale. So we can't accept what's happening now. You're seeing a sleight of hand. Districts are saying, look, we are improving from last year to this year. We're making gains post-COVID. It's a lie because we're being told it's a mastery category, and we're talking about completing about C minus level minimum work. And those groups are so small. They're the smallest percentage, right? Because it's basically grossed up. Those numbers are grossed up. So you're only, when you look at who's approaching school mastery or grade level, excuse me, you're looking at all the kids who approach and all the kids who meet and all the kids who master all get stuck in that bucket. And then when you look at the meets category, you're looking at the kids who meet grade level and master. So it looks like a bigger number. The only number you really should look at is mastery, and know that that means you could have gotten 71% and just eked into that category. That's not good enough. It's why our kids can't read on grade level. They can't write. People and parents all over the state are super frustrated because their kids cannot write a complete sentence. They can't spell. They put capital letters in the middle of words. It's atrocious. Know these things and challenge your local school districts on this. Challenge them to do better for your kids.
And then I'll just share the Canyon ISD results, and then Jamie, I think you have something you maybe like to say related to this stuff. So let's look at math again. And again, these are really good numbers for the state. But again, nothing to celebrate about. So math, 51 to up to 63, back down to 50, meets. And over here for mastery, getting a 71%, 9 to 16%. Is that something that you're proud of? No, we should not be. But yet the TEA keeps changing things so that we celebrate when our kids are actually getting dumber, period. Like she said earlier, I have a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I have seen how Texas education has changed over the last 10 years. And my 16-year-old cannot write the same proficiency that my 20-year-old can, yet he gets A's in everything. And he always scores super high on the STAR test. I can see it, and I know, Jamie, you can too.
Yes, okay, I wanted to say a couple of things. Number one, STAR tests go into your district accountability grade. And like this year, Canyon got an A. I think we had a 92. But I want to point out that our legislators passed a bill that said if you have any failing campuses, ignore them. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's like if I told Aileen's son, hey, you have like 6 failing grades and 15 passing, we're just going to ignore the failing grades and only average your A, B's, and C's, and that's your score for the semester. That is what Texas did to us. And so that's not our school district's fault, but it is their fault when they get up at a school board meeting and say, we got an A, and they had a failing campus, because they're lying, and they know that that bill is there, and they're not telling the truth to the people. But it's also our fault because we are not educating ourselves, and we are not calling them out on it. And we have to bring this stuff up front because they're manipulating. Everybody is manipulating the system, and who loses is the children. Next, I want to say, I'm just going to go back really super fast to the curriculum. When you go in and look at curriculum, they treat you like you're a, need to be in cuffs and you have to go into this private room and you can only look at it for 30 seconds and here's the book and you can't take it with you, you can't take it home. But I want to point out, if you go look at curriculum, whether it's if they give you an online login or you go into the school to look at curriculum, please understand that they're probably only showing you what the teacher uses. You need to ask for every assessment that your child has or will take. That is what they're not showing you. And if it's digital, you need to say, I want to take the test. Give me a login. So, and then the next thing, I'm going to back up one more time and say that what we're seeing, it sounds alarming when they say that they're trying to nudge our children towards these objectives. But when we get radical curriculum, like when we reviewed the 4 health books, in November of 2021 for the State Board of Education, and they only approved 1, which was not good. We saw the manipulation in what they're doing. Same thing when we're reviewing this Amplify curriculum. What they're doing is they're breaking down our children's inhibitions and they're challenging their value system. They have to disrupt a value to have the child, K through 5, mentally question their value system. And it can be subtle and it can be a lot. And so I feel like what Amarillo ISD is doing now is they're going to pull out the most heinous of the disruptions and they're going to leave all the other smaller ones in there. But they are nudging our children towards these objectives. And there are objectives. This is not just happenstance that this stuff is in there. We can see it, particularly when we look at like units, 12 units in one grade, like 3rd grade. We see the cheating. It's okay to lie. It's okay to disrespect your parents. It's okay to think about killing yourself. It's okay to have a naked picture of a girl in her panties in your bedroom. This is in 7th grade. But this is the stuff that we're seeing.
And it goes against everything that we're trying to teach our children. And again, has nothing to do with actually teaching them to write and read and make calculations and maybe someday be a productive citizen. It's a huge problem. And we're spending so much money on the STAR. It is not, and other than telling us that our children continue to get not smart and continue to get dumber, it is not making our children better. It is not doing something good. And so we as a Texas Ed 911, which is the voice of the parents, we don't want state assessments anymore. We want the districts to decide how they want to assess the children in their district, the way it used to be. And that we're talking going back 40 years. But that's what needs to happen because this 40-year experiment has failed and we can see it in our children. But this makes people money. And that's why people want it to stay. Ever since state assessments came on the scene over 40 years ago, reading competencies, math competencies are down, teacher work satisfaction is down, writing competencies are down, student self-confidence is down, and the teacher's time to teach is down. 40 years ago, teachers probably spent 90% of their time teaching. Today, most teachers will say they spend less than 10 teaching. And most of the good teachers I talk to right now are planning on quitting come May. Come this summer, we are going to have a huge, even bigger crisis when it comes to teachers in our schools, and we will be losing the really great ones. And so, and Aileen, this is, she was talking earlier about the kid in the middle and everything else on the outside. So I want to give you an example. We've got health education, community involvement, family engagement. We're just one of the many, many things, and we get the privilege of participating with our children. This is the direction that Texas is headed. If you go to the CDC's website, why the CDC is in the business of designing schools is beyond me. This is on the CDC's website. Whole school, whole community, whole child. And what we just described to you as happening in our schools is what the CDC has been and is still promoting. We are headed this direction. This is not something that is a possibility in the future. We are already there. And we have to rewind it. We have to stop it.
To that point,
you want me to go back?
You know what? To that point, we have to take this very, very seriously for a couple of reasons. Number one, the money we got after COVID, and every school in the nation got it, $190 billion with a B dollars flooded into our nation's public schools the largest infusion of federal funding into our schools in history. It was supposed to go to address learning loss and social emotional needs of children, and things like masks and plexiglass and, the hand sanitizer. But that essentially capitalized an artificial market. And this stuff is everywhere. And all of the companies that are serving this model are everywhere. And they're well funded because schools have to spend the money on this. So it's everywhere. Your district has it. My district has it. Every district. Florida didn't refuse it. Texas didn't refuse it. They all have it. So there's a lot of money behind this. And if that, so Department of Health in Texas is actually incentivizing schools by giving $10,000 grants to school districts if they will pilot whole school, whole child, whole community. In California, the federal government gave California $3 trillion to produce thousands of these pilots. This is right on our doorstep. It's already pre-funded. Our state Department of Health is in on this. The only thing that stands between our kids and this model are conscientious parents and taxpayers standing up and saying, heck no, not on our watch.
That's exactly right, and it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of a lot of things to tackle, but there are so many parents across Texas who have been learning about what's going on, and we're able to help people. And so, these are just incredible people that are part of a much larger group. But even this large group, we can't do it on our own. It is a monumental task, but one worth taking because it is it's the future of Texas. Truly it is.
Right, and do notice, when they say whole child, look at all the elements. That's health, medical health. They want to have your kids come to have medical appointments in school, psychological health, nutrition, counseling, all of it. So they mean all of your child.
They do. And so our solutions, like I mentioned, is we want to eliminate the STAR test and get back to districts being in charge of that. We want to go back to just the absolute basics because we have to build kids that know how to do their math, that we don't push into algebra when they can't add 9 plus 4. That is happening right now, all the time. It is unacceptable. And so we need to get back to reading, writing, math, and science. And I'll tell you, I do not have history on this list for a reason. The history that is being taught in most of our schools is very woke, and it is only going to get worse. And so until you know for sure that they are teaching pro-America, pro-patriot history, we are not advocating to keep history at this point. Just the basics and get all the other crap out of our schools. So problem number 3, the special interests are what are driving all of these policies. And you've probably gotten a hint of that through all of this. This is the way things are supposed to work. We, the people, elect our board of trustees, and they are supposed to represent us. The TEA is supposed to be to the side and advising them when they have issues, because it should be local control. But over the years, the TEA has gotten bigger and been given more authority, and it has taken authority away from our local schools. And so instead, this is what it looks like. And this is not an exaggeration. You can't even see we the people here. If I wanted to cover it up, but I wanted you to see that we were still kind of there. The board of trustees are being bombarded from everywhere, including the TEA, who is now basically over the school boards, back to Lee's point, that there's so much being pushed down from the TEA, which violates Texas Education Code. The TEA is violating Texas Education Code with which they are asking and telling the school boards and the administrators to do. It is unacceptable. And all of these different plus more interests have interests in making money off of our children. And that is what is driving what is happening in our schools, not actually the education of our children.
I might just add one point on that one. Not only are they making money off of our kids, they're actually making money. Data is the new currency. They're actually raking in our kids' data. And with all of these electronics and the surveys and everything that's being delivered on an electronic device, it's as if they are taking the lid right off our kids' heads, sucking the human ability to learn right out of them. And that is the capital that they use to build artificial intelligence businesses, big data, big ed, big tech businesses. They're literally taking their human capital, their ability to learn, and they're creating very realistic AI with that. It's got to stop. Back
Yeah.
to basics is the only thing that's going to save us from that.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so when I started doing my job in 1997, actually, no, let me back up earlier in my boss's day. In the early 1990s, you had these huge national psychiatric hospital chains that were involved in some fraud schemes. And part of those schemes revolved around captive populations like school children, right? They would, because schools, you do have kids with problems. You do have kids that are discipline problems. So they would advertise, let us come do an assessment for you. Some hospital chains even donated school counselors to schools who would then refer back to the hospitals. That came to a screeching halt when I started in 1997. There were still people going to prison over that. There were still lawsuits ongoing. Families would call us and tell us about their progress. And what we see, what I've seen ever since is when you group people together, they're convenient. We worked on nursing homes for a while because elderly people were being heavily drugged, and we found guys who would operate out of the trunk of their car, going from nursing home to nursing home, drugging the heck out of old people. Why? Because they are a target of convenience. They're grouped together. A nursing home is called a congregate setting because people congregate. Their schools are no different. And I was reminded of that in 2019. There was a mental health education program being done in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We saw an article about it, and I noticed who the head of it was, and it was a professor that we knew had long-standing ties to drug companies. And so we wanted to know more about this, so we sent an open records request. We wanted everything they had. And of course, they argued and we're talking about a major university now, their medical school, and they argued to the Attorney General, no, we don't want to release, but how they argued was what was interesting. We have explained, and Melissa put vendor in there, I'm going to say university. We have explained how the university is a marketplace competitor. In addition, we have explained how the release of the submitted information will jeopardize the university's objectives and goals and result in specific harm to the university's marketplace interests. As such, the university asserts that the information at issue is protected from disclosure. They were worried about their marketplace interests. These are public schools.
They should be worried about our children
kids.
and our parental rights, not the vendor.
Exactly. And the program's still going on. Interestingly enough, one of the projects that this same professor was involved in was something called the Texas Medication Algorithm Project. It was a prescribing algorithm. What drug do you prescribe first? And it tended to favor the newest, most expensive ones. But they also had patient education materials. And this slide is from a mental health coloring book for children that was part of those materials. Chris, are you sad? Chris was a little kangaroo. He was sad for a very long time. The punchline is his parents took him to a special doctor. The doctor gave him medicine. Now, Chris takes medicine every day. And of course, he's not aggravated, he sleeps, and he even gets dessert. They were selling it to kids. Right? And if you look at this coloring book, these are kids on an elementary school level. That was in 2000. I can tell you, reviewing health textbooks with Aileen and Jamie, to me, they read like marketing communication too. Numerous prompts to seek professional help, hints on finding help, like, if you think you may need help, going to a teacher or a nurse or other relative, because they may be able to help you find a therapist or even drive you to or from appointments. Do you want a teacher driving your kid to and from psych appointments? That's ridiculous. You're the parent, it's your job. It's your job to decide, and it's your job to monitor your child's care, particularly when it's mental health, because in mental health, there are liberty interests involved. Your child says the wrong thing, they end up in a psychiatric hospital. You need to be involved.
And I know this sounds wild, but Texas now has, I think it was last session, but we now have a Texas Child Mental Health Plan. It is like a 5 or 7 year plan. I can't remember, but there are programs within that plan, one in particular called Aware, and I'm sure there's more. But their goals are actually, and they put it in print, their goal is to increase referrals, increase referrals at the school. So those are their objectives, is to start sending kids to other mental health experts. So this is real and this is happening. And we have to be really aware, and particularly we need to pay attention to which legislators in our area are known as the mental health gurus, some, I won't say their name right now, and that are known for passing these bills, and they work with the Meadows Mental Health Institute. And listen, everybody up here wants a child that is hurting to get help, but we have to pay close attention when there's too many services and too many mental health coordinators, and they're throwing flags up all the time, because what we had mentioned a lot of, is this is going on their records. Any kind of thing is going on their permanent record, and it stays with them forever. And I know this sounds a little alarming, but we really feel like where this is headed long term is if your child has a bunch of red flags in their record, maybe one day they won't be able to do certain things within our communities, right? Maybe buy a firearm, maybe get a certain type of a job, because this is on their record and stays with them for life.
Yeah, actually, in 1997, we had to get legislation passed to help the victims of that earlier fraud scheme to clear their mental health record so that it wouldn't interfere with military service, high security employment, things like that. We don't want kids deprived of opportunities. The other thing is effectiveness. And again, we all want kids well and happy, and we certainly don't want kids committing suicide. None of us. Unfortunately, there's this paradox. We looked at suicide rates among 15 to 19-year-olds from 1999 up through 2020, and it was interesting because from 1999 up until about 2007, because of those older schemes, insurance money for mental health was tight. Psychiatric hospitals were closing. They were having a hard time staying in business. Access to care was hard. And yet, if you look at that graph, the suicide rates were downtrending, right? Then you had a little spike in 2009, and so the legislature in 2011 said, no, we need to do a lot of suicide prevention efforts in our school, and we've done more and more and more. And at the same time, Obamacare passed. More people had insurance. The federal bailout bill was a mental health parity bill. It would pay for mental health on a par with things like cancer. We have unparalleled access, and instead of going down, teen suicide rates skyrocketed. We've got to capture relevant outcomes. It's not good enough to capture how many kids got put in service. If we're not keeping alive, it doesn't matter, right? How many kids are on the waiting list for your local mental health authority? What's happening with their school attendance? What's happening with disciplinary referrals? Those are the types of things that we're capturing. What we're not capturing is how many kids are being hauled off to the psych hospital, how many kids are being drugged, how many kids are committing suicide. We're not capturing that in relation to those programs so that we know, okay, we made a change. What has it done? Has it made things better or worse? And it's important to have that, because right now we are literally operating blind.
In this legislative session, there's going to be a huge push for more mental health. So that line is just going to keep going up. And so even though I believe the intent of the legislators is good, it is the absolute wrong solution. And so we need to be very loud and very clear that that is not what we want. It's unacceptable. And that is not what protects our kids.
Well, and we need parents involved from minute one. If somebody believes your child has a problem, well, let me ask you, what would you do if your neighbor's child was having a problem? Would you stay silent, or would you tell your neighbor? Would you keep that child safe until the neighbor could arrive? Isn't that what we would all expect? That's what we want.
Exactly.
But we can't turn it into a big marketplace, because then other interests get involved.
That's right. And so, so some solutions that we have related to all of these things and all these special interests that have access to our children. We would like the Commissioner of Education to return to an elected position so that he would be responsive to the voters and not to the special interests. It was in 1949, the last time that he was elected, and the Commissioner of Education in other states, many of them are elected. This is something we're asking for. This is something that I'm not currently seeing anybody talking about doing a bill on, but we're still hopeful in that regard. We also need to prohibit the acceptance of federal funds that violate Texas law. A lot of these problems originate from the federal government sending money and programs our direction that violate Texas and what we believe and what is on the books related to our laws. We need to end taxpayer-funded lobbying, which is TASA and TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Association of Administrators. Those types of things take our tax money, it goes to the school district, then the school district sends money to them, and then they go to Austin and lobby against our rights. That's unacceptable. It needs to stop. And we also need to make it illegal to treat our children as data. From a Texas Ed 911 standpoint, the only data that should be collected on our children are their grades, period. That's it. Nothing else. And we have a lot of work to do to get back to that. And so then moving on to the last problem, which is that our schools are focused on social engineering. And that's what we've been talking about, is who the special interests are and what are they doing with our kids. And so what we haven't really talked about at this point is the sexualization of our children. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about a lot of challenges and problems. But one of the things that's ingrained in all of these programs and curriculums are the sexualization of our children. And so, Aileen, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. This is a really serious problem. Experts say, well, let's say this. There are a lot of people who are pushing this agenda who believe that if children have certain information, they'll be more able, this is their excuse for sexualizing children, they'll be better able to defend themselves should they be violated. They'll know the right words, and they'll understand, boundaries, good touch, safe touch, and bad touch, and that sort of thing. Experts disagree, and experts say, no, it actually opens your child up to being more of a target. So we know that there is no basis in social science for this. There's no good science behind doing any of this. In fact, all it is designed to do is to break down our children's natural inhibitions and normalize the presence of these things, that they should be accessible to them, and do something that is part of a critical theory. I like to call it a critical sex and gender theory, because instead of recognizing that our children are minors, that they don't have fully formed frontal lobes, and that they don't have the capacity to consent, and that there's a reason why we protect our children from this, because it does exceedingly great damage to a young person to be sexualized at a very young age. The gender theory, the critical theory says, you may not be 18, maybe you can't consent to sex, and maybe you can't sign a contract, but you know what, if we can teach you how it's gonna feel good, and we can tell you how it could be pleasurable, you can make your own decisions. And then so we open up this world of graphics and literature and, birth control and everything, abortion, Planned Parenthood, and every manner of instruction that is completely inappropriate and exposing our kids to great risk. Some of the ways, some of the examples you'll see, the library books, you've heard about this all over the nation. There are parents all over Texas fighting this in their school districts. This particular book, All Boys Aren't Blue, you can read for yourself what the content of that book is. It doesn't belong in a child's library. Every school library is focused on a population which only serves minor children. This doesn't belong in our libraries. There are laws on the books that address obscene material and pornography. A lot of people say, how could it possibly be legal? There are loopholes in the law that need to be removed. Some other ways that we see this exemplified in our classroom. It may not be happening here in your district, but there are districts throughout Texas that are actually teaching comprehensive sex education. I left California after 3 years of just blood, sweat, and tears, thousands and thousands of hours trying to fight this. It is incredibly destructive. Only to come here to Texas and find out how it started in California was that it was seeded by a CDC program out of Fort Worth ISD. The CDC used a certain federal program and brought a program to Fort Worth. And then after a year or two, they said, hey, Fort Worth, you seem to be doing such a great job. Let's replicate the program. That's what they do with federal grants. So they replicated to California. Texas exported comprehensive sex education. That blew my mind. It probably blows yours as well. Let's see, I don't know if you have you've got some.
Yeah, and gosh, when I moved back to Texas almost 10 years ago now, and we had a more of an abstinence-based program in San Antonio at the time, but very quickly they switched to a very aggressive comprehensive sex education, and it was all about telling middle school children, where's your line? Where do you draw the line today when it comes to sexual activity? And then they would give them all the different choices and they could pick. And it was all the stuff that we do not need to be talking about in school. And that is actually a very mild program. And so think about, you're sexualizing these children at a young age. You're encouraging them to be sexualized. And so they're going to be more apt to look at pornography. They're going to be more apt to look at those different things. And I read the other day that there's a huge issue going on with men right now, and it used to be that less than 8 in 100, so less than 8% of men would have erectile dysfunction issues in their 20s. Now it is 1 in 3. And the reason for that is because we are constantly, as a society, sexualizing our children, and our boys are going and continuing to be sexualized with pornography and all kinds, and library books, and you name it. We are causing harm and damage beyond the soul. It is physical and spiritual, and it is a huge problem, and it is another way to divide our children from us, especially as Christian parents, when we teach our children that sex is for marriage and that they should save themselves for marriage. These comprehensive sex education programs basically say that, you're an idiot if you think that. And that's inappropriate. And it's outside, it's not even just in the sex education programs, it's in everything in our schools. You can no longer just pull your kid out of sex education and hope that they're not going to be sexualized elsewhere.
Yeah, we should have no literature in the libraries where a child is aroused on any level. I'm sorry, we should not. I just want to point out on this particular slide, one of the grievances that I filed at Canyon ISD was over the Amaze videos. And so they are the cutest, sweetest little cartoon-like videos you've ever seen. And the reason I found one is that multiple different departments in Canyon ISD have social media. I don't know why. We have a marketing budget. We spend money on social media and promoting the school district. I think that's insane. But separate from that, the counselors were posting all sorts of content on this social media channel. And one of them was a video, and I can't remember what it was about. This particular Amaze video was innocent, but the whole other catalog of content on the Amaze site is off the hook inappropriate. And I'm talking wild, like comprehensive sexuality. The little cute cartoon girl goes to, change her gender or show her top or bottom. And so anyways, once that video quits, you know how YouTube works, right? The next one queues up. So again, this was like a tactic. Hook the child, get them to watch it, and then move down the row. And so just be aware of these kind of videos because they're all over YouTube.
They are, and even the curriculum that the State Board of Education adopted just a couple years ago called Goodhart's-Wilcox, adopted's the wrong word, they approved it. And so a lot of school districts across the state have adopted it. A lot of parents have been fighting against that. First of all, the State Board of Education failed us when they approved that curriculum. I think some of them know that, and I think some of them knew it at the time, but it's unacceptable that they approved that curriculum.
I want to point out that only 3 members voted against it, and one of them was Jay Johnson from Pampa, Texas, who was then our State Board of Education member.
Very good.
Aaron Kinsey is our new State Board of Ed person that just got elected in November. He's from Midland. But Jay did listen and stood up, so I'm proud of that, but it still was adopted.
Yes, and we are so proud and so appreciative of him. But in that book, it doesn't refer to a woman as the person who gets pregnant. It is pregnant people. Again, totally inappropriate. Should have never been approved. Women are who have babies, period. But this is part of normalizing this language with our children. One thing I want to make sure that you're aware of is the School Health Advisory Council Every school district is required to have one, and it is supposed to be where the community comes together and decides what they want taught in their school districts as it relates to health, which includes human sexuality, mental health, all of those things. But back when the shack was established in the mid-90s, at the same time, very left organizations infiltrated these shacks. They understood the power that they had. And so most shacks are incredibly liberal. They have handpicked liberal parents. If you are lucky enough to get some conservatives on there, that's awesome. If you're lucky enough that you have a conservative shack, that's awesome, but almost unheard of. One way you can really give back to your community and protect your community is being on the shack as a conservative person and getting other people on the shack, and make sure that the shack is operating properly, because the shack could recommend, and it would be lawful to recommend to your school board, that you don't want sex education at all. That is the role of the parent, period. And you could recommend that to the school board. The liberal shack will not do that. They will recommend very aggressive curriculums. And so we have trainings related to the shack, as well as several other things. I just want to make sure that you're aware this is a really wonderful local opportunity to participate. And then, SEL is really a vehicle for a lot of these different things. We have a training on social emotional learning, and I'll talk through that handout here in a little bit. There's so much more beyond what you have heard here related to social emotional learning and all that gets encompassed into that. When it comes to stopping the social engineering, the first thing we need to do is we need to stop sexualizing Texas kids. And we need to repeal the obscenity exemption. We need to establish non-voluntary requirements for library materials. We need to prohibit instruction and discussion related to sexual orientation and gender through all 12 grades. That does not belong in our schools. We need to abolish sex education altogether in our schools. But we have to be careful, because the left is calling gender an identity issue, not a sex education issue. And that's how they're getting it out to be taught outside of sex education. And it's a game, and it's a huge problem. From a Texas Ed 911 standpoint, we are advocating that only biological sex should be talked about, referred to, or recognized in our schools, period. That is the biological scientific truth. We cannot change our gender, even if we desire to. And right now, what is happening in our schools is we are teaching our children to hate who they are, to hate how God created them. We need to teach them to love how they have been created and to foster who they actually are. This boy does not have to be just like this boy. This girl does not have to be just like this girl, but this girl is a girl and will always be a girl. And to the extent that we teach anything other than that in our schools, we are basically nothing different than a cult. I'm sorry, we're really not. If we're not going to teach the truth, what are we? Lastly, we need to correct our failed discipline policies. There are several of them, and we have several different bill selections or options that we've taken to legislators, and they are working on it. I will tell you, I'm a little bit concerned because of the fact that we have the two different issues. I want to make sure that we balance protecting teachers, but that we don't put kids who don't deserve to be in DAEP and DAEP. And so we just want to continue to be loud in both places and make sure we protect our teachers. Under no circumstance should our teachers ever be at risk, period. It is absolutely unacceptable. And so there are a lot of different laws that have to be changed to accomplish this. And go ahead.
I just want to say real quick about restorative practices. So that is a discipline policy that's been pushed from TASB down, and Canyon ISD teachers have been trained in restorative discipline practices. And I'm just going to summarize it. You can research it yourself. I have information on my blog. But basically what it is she hurts him. Let's bring them together. You say you're sorry. You say you're sorry. Let's get into maybe a circle. They have restorative practices circles. Everybody kumbaya, and then go back to class. There's no discipline, and there's no consequences. And then they get them back into school because they want to keep them in the classroom. Because if we have attendance, butts in the seat, we get money. Right. Right.
And one thing that you said, but I want to make sure that you understood what this meant. So let's say Jamie and I get in a fight in class. Let's say I hurt Jamie. So they put the two of us together. I'm supposed to apologize to Jamie, which would be a good thing, right? I hurt her. She's supposed to apologize to me. Why would she apologize to me? There's no reason for that, right? Unless unless it was provoked or something like that. But restorative justice makes you first look at the why someone might have done something, not that you should actually be apologized to. And so it is not the restorative discipline or restoration that we as Christians think about. It is very, very different. They're using language that we like to use in our Christian life that is not the same.
And I'm going to throw in one more thing real quick. There are also law firms. There's 3 major law firms in Texas that a lot of districts contract with that use our taxpayer money to fight against parents. They represent the districts. One of the biggest ones is called Walsh Gallegos. Canyon ISD does use them. Jim Walsh, you can find him. He not only makes money through his law firm, but he also is a huge proponent of restorative justice and discipline. You can find, I have it on my website. He has published all sorts of articles on it. Then, separate from his law firm, he has another education company where he also will train school districts on restorative discipline and practices. So he's making money coming and going. And so we've got to change that too, because they're using our money to fight against us.
Yes, and there is evidence that shows that before Wash Gallegos comes into a school district, the school district might be in the red. Well, they come in, they start advising them on discipline, the DAP placements increase, and all of a sudden, they're in the black. So we do believe that there is money connected to getting kids into DAP. We're still working on trying to figure out the best way to prove that. If you happen to know anybody who understands school finances, we would love that referral. Someone who thinks like we do. We do need some help in that regard. So what we're going to do now is I just have a few things, kind of housekeeping things to go over with you, and then we're going to move over to Q&A. Panelists, you did good. They could literally talk for hours, and we would never run out of material, and so they did a really good job. So first of all, you all know this, but all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. First of all, you guys showed up here, so you're not the type of people who sit home and do nothing. You are here on a Friday night, right? But we do need to continue to fight this fight, and you know, we've lost some battles at the legislature, even just this week. But I am 100% confident that we can still prevail. And what I was thinking about this week when I realized that, are you aware of what happened with no Democrat chairs? Are you anybody aware of that kind of stuff? Okay, so what happened at the legislature this week in Austin is that over the last several legislative sessions, even though we've had a Republican majority, our Republican leader on the House has appointed Democrats to run committees, not all of them, about 40% of them. And so what that means is that they're going to decide what bills get heard in those committees. So let's say, for example, if there's a Democrat running the Education Committee, what's the probability that we would pass a bill related to biological sex only at schools? Probably not very high. But if we had the right Republican there, or even a Republican majority, then we would be more apt to pass it. And so we are giving up the leadership that we earned through a vote. And so they tried this week to set a rule in place that said that that couldn't happen. Well, they played a bunch of games. They didn't even allow the vote to take place. And that can be incredibly defeating. Anything we do in life, you know, we want God to come in and solve the problem right now. And we've been begging for him to solve these education issues for years. And it can be really easy to say, well, there's no way we're going to accomplish much this year, because we're probably going to have someone that's a Democrat as head of the Education Committee, or, you know, whatever the situation might be. And all I know is that my God is way bigger than that. And all I know at the end of this session, when we look back at all that is accomplished in education, we're going to celebrate. And we maybe didn't see it coming, but we're going to celebrate because we know God did it. If we had won that vote this week, it would be all about us. We would think we did it. But at the end of this legislative session, when we accomplish really big, incredible things only by the grace of God, it will be because God did it, not because we did. And so we have to wake up every single day, continue to fight this battle, because it's your children, it's your grandchildren who are at risk, your neighbor, your son's future wife. Even if you've pulled your child out and are homeschooling, and my youngest is in private school, and I still pray about that every day because I think I need to be homeschooling, because This is seeping into our private schools as well. They go to the same trainings oftentimes that our public school teachers go to. So they are receiving the same indoctrination in a lot of ways. And so we don't want to give up. We want to continue to fight no matter what gets brought our way.
I just want to say that we've heard that Harold Dutton, a Democrat from Houston, will be the chair of the Education Committee again. He was before. We'll see. But we hear that, so not good. But I want to point out that Ken King from Canadian supposedly is going to be on there.
I have heard some good, the one thing, I have heard the rumors that Dutton might be the chair. I've actually heard good things that there could be some new good Republicans that might be on that committee. So please pray for the outcome of that committee. The good news is we can take some of these education bills might get assigned to other places. And so we'll be watching all the different committees, not just education, but education is a big one. And we're going to work with whoever is there, and we're going to go fight for the rights of parents, no matter who is there. But we're going to need help from all the seats all across Texas, talking to all of their legislators so that they can do nothing but support these priorities and make sure that they pass. If we were to pass all 13 of these priorities, we would fix public education. And so we have a lot of work to do. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to become an ally. And the best way you can do that is you can either sign up on the sheet when you leave, or you can go to our website, which is texased911.com. You can scan this QR code. But when you become an ally, it puts you on our email list. And then you will get our alerts when we say, hey, I need you to call or email your rep, or here's a bill that we're real excited about, whatever that situation might be. You can do all of that work sitting at home on your computer, picking up the phone. So on your seat, you should have had a call to action page. And there are 2 QR codes up there. One of them you can use to sign up as an ally. The other one you can use to go find out who your senator and House rep are. You might not know who they are now, but my challenge to you is before you go home tonight, make sure you look them up. Get their phone numbers, get their emails. Actually, their emails are a little bit more challenging to get. You have to call to get those, or we can send you in a direction to get those. But put them in your phone, because we should be reaching out to them on a very, very regular basis. That's something that my parents did not teach me that I wish that they had.
That's right. And if you're sitting further back, you may not have an action sheet in your chair.
Whoa, what did I do? I think I messed up, but I can wing it from here. It looks like this. It's got the Texas Ed 911 at the top. And if you don't have one, they are on the seats up towards the front.
That's right.
And it'll tell you some different things you can do. So from home, we all can contribute at different levels. You do not have to be a Jamie or an Aileen to be part of this initiative. We need help no matter what. The first thing we need to do is we need to pray. We need to pray for our legislators, and we need to pray for parents, that parents will wake up. Because there are a lot of parents that are still asleep, or their heads are in the sand, or they don't even fully realize why all this stuff we talked about is a problem, because they're young parents and they received a significant amount of indoctrination prior to becoming parents, and they're confused as to why this is a problem. We have trainings you can go to online on Jamie's awesome website, best website ever, TexansWakeUp.com. Not only does she have a blog where you can type in just about anything you can imagine related to education, and there's so much wonderful information. She just added a trainings page, and on that page, there's currently an SEL training. There's a public information request training, which teaches you how to obtain information from your school districts and even the city or any other government institution, how to audit your library. We're also going to have a comprehensive sex education one that will be live in February. If you go to TexasEd911.com/training, which is listed at the bottom of the sheet, it's kind of a secret page. You can't get there from the website. You have to know it exists. It will list any live trainings that we have coming up, as well as we'll link you to Jamie's website to get any of the recorded trainings that are out there. They're not very long. Some of them are 30 minutes. The longest one is an hour. You can do it at your own pace. And then we'll be having more trainings on a regular basis. So the more you want to learn, the more desire you have to learn, there will be trainings to help increase your knowledge. And then, of course, any emails you get from us, you can forward to your legislators, write letters to them, call them. And then locally, you can get involved with your GOP groups. If you're not signed up with Jamie and know everything that she's doing with Texans Wake Up, please do that. And I'm positive she could connect you with the other GOP groups in the area. And you can join your shack. You can learn about what's going on with your shack. You can run for school board. You can monitor your school board. There's so much stuff here that can be done. Even though our laws, don't have any enforcement, our school boards are where the enforcement should be happening. And they are getting indoctrinated by the TEA and TASB, and so they need our prayers and they need our help. And again, at the state level, you can meet with your legislator. Once you find out who your senator is, your House rep is, call them. Set up time to talk with them. Take your Texas Ed 911 push card. I have more if you want more. And sit down with them and say, I saw this presentation, and where do you stand on these priorities? They're important to me. Let them know. If you don't want to set up an appointment to go talk to them, set up a WebEx time to talk to them. Maybe you're, housebound for a week because you have knee surgery or something like that. You can utilize that time. If you want to make a trip to Austin, there will be days where it will be important to be there, where we can have testimony, where you can support people who are testifying. You can walk the halls. You can pass around the Texas Ed 911 stuff, as well as other things that are important to you. Whatever level of involvement you would like to have, there are lots of opportunities. We would just encourage you to choose one, at least to get started. And if you have any questions, I know Jamie's available, we're available. We just want to do the best we can to help save our kids, to help save Texas, because the current generation that is being trained is anti-gun, anti-patriot, anti-America. That's not what we want in our Texas. That's not the type of Texas that we desire at all. So I think now what we can do is we can go to questions. So I don't know if we want to take one of these out to the...
I'll take this out. How about, and then JT, if you would, where are those baskets? Oh, over there. JT, if you'll help me pass the basket, we'll just, and again, it all goes to them. And if you'll just raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll see what comes up. Yes, sir.
Of course, mine is just a recommendation that I've noticed in the school system because of a substitute teacher witnessing the problem with discipline. That I know in some respects that the children don't respect one another and their gender. So my recommendation is that in process of trying to improve the discipline is to separate the genders after age 5th grade.